We're going to hear from Steve Lerner next from SEIU, the architect of the Justice for Janitors campaign. Currently, he's working on partnering with unions and groups in Europe and South America to build a campaign to hold financial institutions accountable in the global economy.
It's hard for me to think about any part of organizing without saying what just happened in this economic crisis and what it means. And essentially, forgetting all the rhetoric, and this is a different panel, so I won't do it here, but you know, in the end, the guys that destroyed the economy, took us to the end of a depression, edge of a depression, have used the crisis they created as a justification to now eliminate unions and eliminate public workers and eliminate everything. It's sort of a wonderful, if you want to about audacity, a wonderful twist of history that they crashed the economy, and then they say, well, the economy is in such shit, we have to eliminate everything because there's no money, except we have all the money. Now, the reason I think that ties to this discussion is because I don't know how to have a discussion about labor and community if we don't first say, what is it we need to do at this time in history? What is a strategy that gives us some chance of winning? Because I spent my lifetime as a union organizer, you know, Justice for Janitors, a lot of things, but it seems we're at a moment where the world's either going to get much, much worse or much, much better. And what I want to do is just throw out a couple big, I don't know if they're big ideas, but broad ideas of how to think about this, which is unions are almost dead. We cannot survive doing what we do. But the simple fact of the matter is community organizations are almost dead also. And I think if you think about what we need to do, it may give us some direction, which is essentially what the folks that are in charge, you know, the big banks and everything, what they want is stability, right? Every time you read an article, did you hear that horrible thing in Japan when Kudlow said, the tsunami's really bad, but the markets are stable? No, this is not like a Marxist caricature of him. This is what he said. And so every time there's a crisis in the world, and I know a lot of people have written about it, they say, well, the markets are stable. So as I've thought about it more and more is that we're in this crazy position where the more the economy is stable, the better they do. But what's changed in America is the economy doing well has nothing to do with the rest of us doing well. You know what I'm saying here? Like, it used to be you needed a middle class or a healthy working class for rich people to get richer. They figured out that they don't need us to be rich. They can do very well in global markets without us. And so what does this have to do with community and labor organizing? It seems to me that we're in a moment where we need to figure out in a much more through direct action and much more concrete way how we really are trying to disrupt and create uncertainty for capital, for how corporations operate. And it may sound like that's a crazy thing, at a moment of weakness we could do it, but the thing about a boom and bust economy is it's actually incredibly fragile because it's not based on real wealth. It's based on gambling and all of that. And so there are actually extraordinary things that we could do right now that would start to destabilize the folks that are in power and start to rebuild their movement. And for example, 10% of homeowners, going back to where you started, who are a quarter of all people who own a home are underwater, right? Their home is worth, they're paying more for it than it's worth. 10% of those people are now in strategic default, meaning they're refusing to pay, but they're staying in their home. That's totally spontaneous, right? They figured out it takes a year to kick me out of my home because more foreclosures backed up. I'm going to stay, I won't pay. It's just what business does. It's a good business decision. If you could double that number, you would make put banks on the edge of insolvency again. Students have $1 trillion in debt. Our city, New York City, I see you have students over there, right? We have this dynamic where you're cutting you're cutting funding for education, students are in debt, and there are no jobs. It's a pretty good triangle. You're screwed. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We have an entire economy that's built on debt and banks, and so the question would be, what would happen if we could organize homeowners en masse to do a mortgage structure? To say, if we get 500,000 people to agree, we'll agree we won't pay our mortgages. It would literally cause a new financial crisis for the banks, not for us. We would be doing quite well because we wouldn't be paying. It's students.
We do live in our home.
Yeah, well, actually, the only people who are doing this successfully are rich people. This is an extraordinary thing about our economy, is that rich people have figured this out. So they have $1 million home, that if they bought it for $2 million, it's worth $1 million. So they literally have a little manual. Like you can get this from lawyers to do the math. You stay in your home. While you're in your home and your credit's good, you buy a new one cheaper. Then you rent your home out for $5,000 a month. You make $60,000, then when they foreclose, and then you've already moved out, then when they foreclose, you've already made a profit for a year. Anyway, and then they convince regular people that it's bad not to pay your debts. So the four things I want to throw out as an idea, and then this will take us back to the community and other groups, is government is being strangled by debt, by Wall Street. And in fact, what's happened is Wall Street, when the crash happened, got to renegotiate all its debt, but it's holding the rest of us into our same debt. So there's hundreds of billions of dollars in debt that government has to banks that, without getting technical, is basically excess interest rates, meaning the banks, because they get money from the federal government for free, you know that the banks get money from the government for free, then they loan it out. This is a very good business model. If any of you ever want to get rich, what you do is you get somebody to give you money for free, and then you loan it to somebody, and then you say, I need a bonus because I'm a brilliant business person. Do you want to try this again? Who here could make money if I gave money for free and then you loaned it for 3% to somebody else? You would be very wealthy. But what I'm getting at is there's four things we could do that could really upset Wall Street. One is if city and state and other government entities demanded to renegotiate their debt because they're paying too much interest. And you might say, well, why would the banks ever do it? Because cities and counties could say, we won't do business in the future with you if you don't renegotiate the debt now, meaning about a third of bank profits generate from dealing with cities and states. So we could leverage the power we have of government to say, we won't do business with you, JP Morgan Chase, anymore, unless you do two things. You reduce the price of our interest since your interest rate is down, and second, you rewrite the mortgages for everybody in the community so they can stay in their home. We can make them do that. The second thing is there's a whole question in Europe now about austerity and students raising the question of a debt strike. What would happen if students said, we're not going to pay? It's $1 trillion. Think about the Republicans screaming about debt, $1 trillion in student debt. There's a third thing that we could think about. What if public employee unions, instead of just being on the defensive, put on the collective bargaining table, when they negotiate, they said, we demand, as a condition of negotiation, that the government renegotiate. We believe in good financial management. It's crazy that you're paying too much interest to your buddy, the bankers. It's a strike issue for us. We will strike unless you force the banks to relieve the debt of the city. I'm not going to go through all the detail except to say there's extraordinary things we do, and then if you add on top of that, if we really thought about moving to the kind of disruption in Madison, but moving that to Wall Street and moving that to other cities around the country where we basically said, you stole $17 trillion, you've impoverished us, and we're going to make it impossible for you to operate. So it's a lot of, that may all sound crazy and impossible. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it leads us back to the panel's subject, which is labor can't do this. Unions can't lead this because at our moment of weakness, it's too hard for us to take that kind of risk. That unions are going to want to defend their pension plan. None of this is wrong. Members of pension plans, we have to negotiate contracts. We've got 1 million liabilities. So the question is, at different times of history, labor could lead this kind of battle when it was stronger. But we can't lead it right now. So if labor can't lead it, we're a critical part of it. We do have money. We have millions of members who are furious. But I don't think this kind of movement can happen unless actually community groups and other actors take the lead. And that's a big reversal of how a lot of these coalition things have been thought about. It's sort of unions helping community groups, or community groups helping us narrowly. And if we really believe that we're in a transformative stage of what's happening in capitalism, and we either need to confront it in a serious way and develop a real ability to put a boot in the wheel, then I think we have to think not about labor community alliances. We have to think about how together we're building something that really has the capacity to disrupt how the system operates. And so I guess raise that we need to think about a whole new way of thinking about this, which is not as a partnership, but building something new. Because the bottom line is, as soon as a union gets sued, it's going to be terrifying. When we get an injunction that says, you know, the union backs down. So we need to build a movement based on we know the repression we're going to face. And I think the only way we can do that is to think much more creatively. And the key thing I sort of throw out is we have to say, what does the other side fear most? They fear disruption. They fear uncertainty. Every article about Europe says they rioted in Greece, the markets went down. The folks that control this country care about one thing: how the stock market does, how the bond market does, and what the bonuses is. So I think we need to have a very simple strategy. How do we bring down the stock market? How do we bring down their bonuses? How do we interfere with their ability to be rich? And if we don't do, and that means you have to politically isolate them, economically isolate them, and disrupt them. So it's not all theory, I'll do a pitch. So a bunch of us around the country think about who would be a really good company to hate. We decided that would be JP Morgan Chase, based here in New York. And so we're going to roll out over the next couple months what will hopefully be an exciting campaign about JP Morgan Chase that is really about challenge the power of Wall Street. And so what we're looking at is in the first week of May, can we get enough people together, we're starting now, to really have a week of action in New York with a goal of vote. I don't want to give any details because I don't know which police agents are in the room. But the goal would be that we would roll out in New York the first week in May. That we would connect 3 ideas. That we're not broke, there's plenty of money. They have the money, we need to get it back. And that they're using Bloomberg and other people in government as the vehicle to try to destroy us. And so that we need to take on those both at the same time. And that we'll start here, we're going to look at a week of civil disobedience, direct action, all over the city, then roll into the JP Morgan shareholder meeting, which is they moved out of New York, because they were afraid, I guess, to Columbus, where there's going to be a 10-state mobilization to try to shut down that meeting, and then looking at bank shareholder meetings around the country, and trying to create some moments like Madison, except where we're on offense instead of defense, where we have brave and heroic battles challenging the power of the giant corporations that we hope will sort of inspire a much bigger movement about redistributing wealth and power in the country. And that labor can't do itself, that community groups can't do themselves, but maybe we can forge something new and different that can be brave enough and daring and nimble enough to do that kind of thing. So there's a few ideas there.
You were talking about why unions are so invested because of their pension plans and why ungovernability, as Francis Fox Pippin and Cloward taught us. You know, poor people's movements are successful when they create conditions of ungovernability, and then you win victories.